All right, so look, walk with me. Did you know that there is a correlation between H.P. Lovecraft's story of Cthulhu and the story of oppressed melanated people rising up? So, if you haven't heard of H.P. Lovecraft or heard of the story of Cthulhu, first thing you should know is that H.P. Lovecraft was very open about being a racist and having particular views about people of color. So you should take that in consideration when you read this story. Now, the story of Cthulhu was basically about this monster that was believed to be sleeping in the depths of the ocean in this sunken city, you know what I mean? And there were all these signs and warnings and fears that this monster, saying that this Cthulhu thing would rise up, and when it did, it would cause chaos, it would bring madness, and it would bring destruction to humanity and civilization. So that's the story, pretty much a short summary. If you want a better version, go look it up, you know what I'm saying? But there is a lot of parallels between that story and the story of oppressed melanated peoples rising up, you know what I'm saying? Here's the correlation, and it makes sense when you take the story out of a racist framework. You know what I mean? If you look at it from a different perspective, what if this monster wasn't a monster at all? And what is this rising from the deeps or the ocean isn't really an ocean? What is this talking about? Our subconscious minds or the collective consciousness, you know what I'm saying? And what if this monster that's not a monster, when it did finally rise, was not necessarily rising to bring chaos and destruction, but to bring a reset, to restore order and balance and justice? You know what I'm saying? The more you start to think about it, the more it makes sense when you look at it from more of a metaphysical perspective, you know what I mean? More of an esoteric perspective. Then you start to see the monster of Cthulhu as not so much as a monster, but as a symbol and a representation of our collective authentic self that has been traumatized and been repressed for so long that it is an extremely powerful energy. And this collective oppression of melanated peoples on a physical level is just a reflection of the oppression on a mental level and a spiritual level. You know what I mean? So this Cthulhu that's been asleep in the ocean, at the bottom of the ocean, is our true authentic self that's just been suffering, sitting in the back. The one that's been crying for justice, crying for help, crying for peace, crying for equality. You know what I mean? Fighting for revolution. All these things. That's our authentic self in the deep, hoping and waiting for a change, hoping things will get better. But the most significant part of the story is when Cthulhu rises, because in the book, they really express this thing that there's this feeling of once Cthulhu rises up out the ocean and wakes up, you can't stop it. There's no going back. There's nothing you can do about it. And I feel like that's similar to when the energy of the collective consciousness of melanated peoples finally decides enough is enough and rises despite the fear, despite the lack, despite being tired, frustrated, all these things. Once the collective consciousness decides to wake up from this sleep and rise from, this isn't a subconscious problem now, this is a conscious problem now, and we all there, you know what I'm saying? Once that rises, maybe to the ones who have been doing the oppression, it would seem like chaos and madness and a destruction to civilization. But to humanity and nature and all the living things on this planet, it would feel and seem like a reset and a balance and a restoration of universal balance. And that's what I think the correlation is between the story of Cthulhu and the story of oppressed melanated peoples across the planet. Now, I know that's not what H.P. Lovecraft intended at all. But like I say in my book, sometimes I think a lot of authors like H.P. Lovecraft, how can I say this? The melanin deficient authors who choose to talk about occult metaphysical topics often talk about things in which they have no knowledge of how to truly integrate with or how to understand. They talk about shit they don't know nothing about. So he might have wrote the story, but he might not even understood the depths of what he was talking about. But I don't know. It's just an idea. What y'all think?